This is the Whole Care Network. Helping you tell your story one podcast at a time. Content presented in the following podcast is for information purposes only. Views and opinions expressed in this podcast are solely those of the host and guest and may not represent the views and opinions of the Whole Care Network. Always consult with your physician for any medical advice, and always consult with your attorney for any legal advice. And thank you for listening to the Whole Care Network.
The isolation and burnout is so horrible. Caregivers become invisible. And, currently the statistic is that 30% of caregivers will pass before the person they're caring for. And that is staggering. It's scary to know that if you have 10 friends that are caregiving, 3 of them will not survive the experience.
This is the Heart of Hospice podcast with Helen Bauer. My guest, Savina Makalena, has dedicated her career to providing resources for caregivers and supporting their ongoing well-being. Whether you're a family caregiver or an end-of-life professional, the Heart of Hospice is here to enhance your hospice experience by connecting you with information you can use about end-of-life care.
This episode is sponsored by Hospice Navigation Services. When end-of-life care becomes confusing or overwhelming, Hospice Navigation Services can help. Hospice navigators are hospice professionals with at least 10 years of hospice experience, trained to provide accurate, unbiased information. Hospice Navigation Services, the guide for your journey. Now, here's today's episode.
You're going to love my guest today. I probably say this about everybody, but I'm so lucky I've never had a bad guest. Savy, who's my new best friend because we have the exact same hairstyle. Thank you. She is currently the vice president of the Hawaii Family Caregiver Coalition. She's also the CEO and founder of Gimme a Break, a nonprofit organization whose mission is to care for caregivers by giving an emotional and physical break to them, as well as resources for their continued well-being. She is also the executive producer and host of the Caring Caregiver show with Evan and Savy. On top of all of that, she's the owner and self-publisher of Giver's Guides, which is an online magazine for caregivers providing resources and support. She's turned her dedication to supporting caregivers into a career after years of working in retail. So she's doing some amazing work. It makes me tired just reading her bio. So you're going to love my conversation with Savina Makalena. She is a caregiver's caregiver. So here's my conversation with Savy. Savy, thank you so much for taking time out of your day to talk with me. It's so good to have you here on the Heart of Hospice.
Oh my goodness. I am so honored. And it's been such a wonderful experience for me just being able to get to know you. And I'm so excited to share with you today. Thank you.
The only thing that would have made this interview better is if we had been sitting in the same room. But
yes.
Not here.
No.
At your place.
At my place in Hawaii.
In Hawaii, which would be way better than what I have down here in Southeast Texas.
Yes. Well, I think that it's geography, right? And so you have to make of it what it is. But yes, I am a little spoiled living in Hawaii. I can't complain. I'm looking at blue skies, 365 days of the year. So that does suck. It's horrible.
It is terrible. I feel bad for you. So our second interview that I do with you when you're on the show.
Yes, absolutely.
Again, we'll make sure, because I want to comfort you and support you in your
Thank you.
troubles.
You're so kind.
All right. We've got a lot of bull going this morning.
Yes, we do.
Let's jump in. I've already given your bio to my listeners and told them about the work that you're doing, because you're doing some amazing stuff in the caregiving space, and a lot of it in these different aspects. But How did you get into this? Because I was looking at your work history on LinkedIn, and you have extensive work background in retail, in the retail industry. What led you to get this started in the caregiving space?
Well, I've been, as far as my work, I've been in retail, yes, for a really, really long time, but I've always been in leadership. And in leadership, so that with the mentoring, and this is also how you understand what a caregiver is, right? Not everyone understands what is a caregiver. Everyone thinks that a caregiver is always just going to be like a family caregiver caring for your mother, or a paid care worker in a facility. But a caregiver is so many things, right? A teacher is a caregiver. A boss is a caregiver. And depending on how you see your position, then you are caring for other individuals in their lives. And when I was in retail, I worked with a lot of different employees, and some of them, in order for them to produce and to succeed, you really, as a mentor and a leader, you have to be able to get involved in their life, to care. If you don't care, then you're just a tyrannical boss that nobody wants to work for, and they're going to leave you anyway. But if you actually care about what you do, then you get involved with their lives. I used to know all about their families, their kids' names, what they did, and everything. And I cared about them as a person. And so that allowed me to help them to find their position and their dream in life. There are part-time employees who became regional directors or some vice presidents because of being able to care about who they were and help them to succeed. So in that way, my retail space definitely made me a caregiver, and had that mentality. And I think I've just kind of always been sort of a natural empath. So that's just sort of a lifelong thing. Well, anyway, my lifelong story. So I would say that that's what the retail background sort of did for me.
It's a little bit of a natural transition, and it makes sense. You've also had a personal caregiving story, which you are currently living out.
Right.
Share with my listeners what your personal caregiving journey looks like these days.
Okay, I'll give you the Reader's Digest version because it starts when I was a child. And as a child, being the daughter of a Japanese national, the daughter's taught to be very subservient. And my mother did not speak English well, or read or write English well. And so when I was born, I was spoke to in Japanese. So Japanese was my first language. I learned English, of course, speaking to my father, and I was bilingual. But as I went to school and learned English, I would come home and teach it to my mother. So I then became her translator. She needed to read a recipe. I read the recipe for her as I learned to read as I got older. And, she needed to write a letter or a note. I wrote it for her. The beauty is I actually wrote checks. I signed her signature, and she didn't even sign her own signature. And so the beauty of that is that when I got into high school, I never had an unexcused absence. It was a wonderful thing. I never really realized how awesome that could be, but a lot of unexcused absences, but I never had one that was unexcused. And all the notes that I wrote for myself had, of course, my mother's signature. And I don't think that they even knew what my mother's real signature would look like. Because it was my version of it. So
a little sketchy there, Savy.
A little sketchy, yes. But,
shady.
It is what it is. And of course, always having to care for her and nurture and protect her. So as a young child and a young lady, I always was on that caring bandwagon, I guess you could say. It was always my primary go-to personality. And then, of course, I had a child of my own, and raised my own child, and then 3 grandchildren, and now showing my age. And so always kind of there. And then more recently, both my parents. So my father for about a year and a half, and he passed. And I still care for my mother, who is actually, she's in foster care now. And she's in hospice in her final stages of dementia. And it's been a long ride. But I also have my mother-in-law who lives with me now, and the love of my life who is now going through cancer. So it's just a constant caregiving, right? It's something that I think I breathe and do.
It sounds like it. It's part of your cellular makeup.
Yes.
So you have shared with me off mic a little bit about your mom's journey with hospice and how that care has gone. Your mom is on her third admission to hospice.
It's so funny. They said they've never had anyone that graduated twice, and now she's in for her third run of hospice. So it's just been a roller coaster. My mother was always, a very stubborn person, but I didn't realize that it could be this stubborn. No, but she has had she's now in her third run of hospice, and definitely I can see how she is wearing and wearing down. But in her first two runs, it was that scare that she was going to pass. And then by some miracle, she got better slowly. And then she was going to pass again. And then she got better slowly. So it's been an emotional ride. Yeah, a very emotional.
So let's talk about that, because I think with a lot of caregivers like you who are taking care of a parent who's got a significant serious illness, there's a roller coaster that comes with that grief.
Yeah.
They talk about grief after a death comes in waves. Grief after a loss comes in waves. But I think anticipatory grief a lot of times is more like a roller coaster.
Yeah. And it's not a fun ride at all.
No, it stinks. I'm not a fan of roller coasters anyway. And maybe people like being scared like that and feeling like they're going to fall and throw up and all that.
Yes.
But as a caregiver, that is emotionally exhausting and mentally exhausting to keep track of that caregiving roller coaster and deal with all those ups and downs. What's that been like for you with your mom?
I think the hardest part is, I'm very fortunate in that because I have my own group sessions that we have with Gimme a Break, I'm able to heal through community there, right? So a lot of that is it's so important to have that community, and I can talk about that more as well. But it's being able to work through some of it, right, and know that you're not alone in it is really important. However, it's just that constant emotion of like you said. I think the hardest part is that you're ready for the loss. You prepare yourself for the loss, but it never comes. It never comes. And then you have to prepare yourself for the care. And you can't ever let go of that. So you can't let go of the guilt. You can't let go of the sorrow. You can't begin your grieving. It's that long goodbye thing, right? You just sort of have to hang on to it. And that's really hard, because it's not that I want to say goodbye, but I don't like seeing somebody, especially that you love, my mother, in that condition. I will say that what helps through that is communication I get. So I think it's super important to have the right agency that you can speak to, that answers all your questions, that fills in all the blanks, that helps you cope with it, and that you really rely on that. And I find that caregivers don't necessarily do that. They just sort of let hospice come in and do their thing, and then they leave. Mm-hmm. And I think it's super important to talk with them, to get your information, and that helps me navigate it, because it's a very hard thing to navigate. And if you're just hanging on for the roller coaster ride, then you're not in control. And when you're not in control, that's even worse.
Right.
And so what you can control is knowledge. And that knowledge is really what helps me get through it. So I know what to expect. I know what stages she is. I know and communicate with doctors and the hospice. So stay in touch, because that's really what helps a lot. Otherwise, you'll just lose your mind.
So any hospice professionals that are listening to this, hear what she's saying. That communication is so important. I didn't hear you say medical equipment. I didn't hear you say medications. I didn't hear you say hospital bed or nursing visits or chaplains. What I hear you saying is communication and educating the caregiver and the patient is key to providing good care. Yeah.
And it's funny because and I've had a few hospice agencies, as you know, excuse me, in this ride. And, the first one asked me, do you need a chaplain? Would you like to speak to a chaplain? Would you like to speak to a social worker? Would you like to? And I was like, no, it's okay. I'm fine. I was in shock. I didn't know who I wanted to talk to.
Sure.
I didn't know what I wanted. And the agency I'm with now, they just call me out of the blue. They'll just call me. I'll get a call out of the blue. And hi, this is so-and-so, listen, I'm just checking on you today. I'm just letting you know that this is what's going on. And that has been so valuable to me. And I know that I should, and it's actually gotten me to relax enough to now form that relationship with them and call them when I have that question. Or when I'm there and they're there, I can talk to them. They become somebody I know. And I think that's super important because caregivers are already so isolated. And the last thing that caregivers do is to ask for any help. They're already in shock. So it's so important for a caregiver to get somebody to reach out to them. And that makes all the difference, I believe.
Well, and the work of advocacy, having to extract information from everybody, that's exhausting for a caregiver. Yes. So my view as a hospice end-of-life worker is it is the responsibility of the hospice agency, of those team members and the end-of-life workers to provide that information proactively so the caregiver doesn't have to constantly seek it out because that's energy they need for other things.
Right.
Yeah.
And I mean, granted, I'm sure there are some people who, maybe just don't want to know, or they're afraid, or, this is their first experience and they don't know any better. But, I'm that advocacy kind of a headspace, right? I'm a researcher. I want to get more information because then I can share that with other caregivers. My first experience, I will tell you, was before I even started Gimme a Break. So that experience to me is the typical experience that a caregiver has, not knowing anything and just being at the mercy of whatever they're being told.
Right.
And it was horrible. It was a horrible experience because I didn't know what to do. I didn't know what to think. I didn't know where to turn. And I just knew my mother was going to die. And my shock when I found out what graduating hospice means, I didn't know that. All of a sudden I was just told, okay, she's graduated. What? What does that mean? I didn't know she was in school.
Yeah, graduating is just a nice way of saying we're stopping your services.
Right.
Right. It makes the hospice feel better, but it's the same thing for the caregiver. It means your extra support, those extra eyes and ears, that clinical support, spiritual, psychosocial, that's just going to stop.
It's gone.
Yay. Congratulations.
Thank you. Great job. Your mother's going to live,
Yes.
And yet she was still deteriorating and she still didn't know who she was or who I was. Right. And I mean, I am so blessed to have the most incredible foster care for her because they're Japanese speaking and it's everything Japanese, right? So it's perfect for my mother because as her dementia's progressed, she has been forgetting her English. And her primary language growing up is her strength. And so if she were in a care home that only spoke English, she would be completely lost.
Right.
And so she has relatable things for whatever moments of clarity she has. And so that helps a lot. And they're very communicative. But when it comes to the hospice agencies, having experienced so many, I'll tell you from a caregiver standpoint, make them speak to you. Don't just stand back and don't just say, okay. I know you're in shock. Take a deep breath and get the important questions in your head and in your heart answered because that's what they're there for. And the good ones will take the time for you.
Absolutely.
And so, and if you're not happy with what they're doing, don't be afraid to hurt their feelings. It's a business.
Yes.
Go and find an agency that will answer your questions and that will give you the care that both you and your caree deserve.
I think caregivers and families and patients are at such a disadvantage when hospice starts out because they don't know that they can ask and that they are supposed to be provided with that information. And they have the right to be informed about every bit of it. And they have the right to find another agency if they want one.
Yes.
Yeah. So, that's why my podcast exists and why yours exists, to let people know that this is a thing.
And bless your heart for that, because I wish I had your podcast to listen to at that time. And again, I know people always say this to me too, is, I wish I had given me a break when I was going through caregiving. And, I wish I had it. Right. That's why we do what we do, because we know what it's like to go through that. And, like my mission is that I don't want any other caregiver to experience what I had to experience. If I can provide the knowledge, the resource, the community for it, then yes, that's what we're going to do.
Yeah. It's the same thing for hospice people. 1,000 times I have heard, I wish we had known about this sooner. I wish we had known hospice would work this way. So my mission in my career has now become, can we eradicate that? Let's all know. Let everybody know. So
I love that. Yes.
That's a huge challenge for caregivers. So when it comes to caregivers, you have become a caregiver for the caregivers is what you're doing these days, a leader for them. What do you think the biggest challenge that caregivers deal with? What's the biggest challenge to caregiving these days?
Well, I talked a little bit about guilt earlier, and I believe caregiver guilt is something that people don't always recognize and know it exists. And caregiver guilt is at the root of so much. And there's guilt for so many reasons. We actually do a whole 10-part series in our sessions on caregiver guilt because it leads to isolation and burnout. And the isolation and burnout is so horrible. Caregivers become invisible. And, currently the statistic is that 30% of caregivers will pass before the person they're caring for. And that is staggering. It's scary to know that if you have 10 friends that are caregiving, 3 of them will not survive the experience.
Savy, back up just a second. Say that statistic again for me.
I will. 30% of caregivers will pass before the person they are caring for. It is the United States current statistic.
Wow.
I'm going to give you another one that's going to scare the bejesus out of you, because it goes up to 70% for those over the age of 70 that are caring for someone.
Wow.
So if you are over the age of 70 and older, and you are caring for somebody, there's a 70% chance that you will pass before them. You take a deep breath, because I also have the Giver's Guides online magazine that I do. And we actually, in this month's issue, feature a story all about that and that statistic. And it talks all about how caregiver burnout is and it's an actual condition. However, no one recognizes that they have a condition because they're just caregiving. And that's the scary part, is when you don't think that you have a condition and you just keep going. You ignore all of the warning signs, and it's totally preventable. It's totally curable, but you have to recognize caregiver burnout in order to do something about it. And that's, again, why caring for caregivers becomes such an important thing.
This episode is sponsored by Hospice Navigation Services, the guide for your journey. Navigating end-of-life care can be confusing and overwhelming. Hospice Navigation Services can help you navigate hospice care for the best end-of-life experience possible. Hospice navigators are hospice professionals with at least 10 years of hospice experience, trained to provide accurate, unbiased information. Our team's compassion and respect for quality of life allows them to help you focus on getting the kind of care you want. When you need in-depth information about hospice, a Level 1 navigation session can provide information on what hospice care includes, roles of the team members, and how to choose a hospice agency. A Level 2 session is the best choice if you want to include multiple members of your family or caregiving village, and includes an explanation of hospice costs and coverage. If you have specific questions about a current hospice experience, a question and answer session with a hospice navigator can give you the answers you need. Watch for the launch of the Hospice Navigation Services in the spring of 2023. Hospice Navigation Services, the guide for your journey. Now, back to the conversation.
What do you think most people misunderstand if they've never done caregiving? What do you think most people misunderstand about what it's like to be a caregiver?
I think going back to what I just said is that they don't believe that they're at risk. Caregivers think, I got this. It's okay. I got this. And, there's also a control issue, right? So the control issue is that, you almost have to feel like you have to prove to everyone that you're doing a good job. And so you kind of get involved in caregiving or you're thrust into caregiving. You go from calm to chaos in a second. And then suddenly you're the one in charge. And then all of a sudden, all eyes are looking at you like you have to make this happen. It suddenly made me feel like, I think I suddenly realized how a doctor feels when you go to them and you're sick and you look at the doctor like, doctor, what's wrong? Cure me. And the doctor has to look at their patient and go, I have to cure this person. How do I tell them I can't cure them? Right. And so it's the same thing with being a caregiver. You're suddenly in charge of this person you're caring for, and everybody's looking at you like, okay, make them better. Okay, do everything you have to do for them. And you're the one in charge now. And you don't got this.
I think we have a tendency to be so hard on ourselves. And from the outside looking in, I think caregiving looks clean and contained and manageable. So,
Yes.
For instance, when a caregiver takes a loved one with dementia or something like that, an Alzheimer's or dementia diagnosis, into the doctor, they get them dressed. They typically get them cleaned up. They get themselves cleaned up. Everybody's neat and tidy, hair's combed, clothes are on and dry.
Yeah.
And that's the face that they present as a caregiving unit.
Right.
Here's my loved one, and here I am, and we've managed this. We're prepared for this visit. But when in reality, what the doctor and the nurses don't see is that caregiver hasn't brushed their teeth in 3 days. They haven't had a complete uninterrupted night's sleep in over a year. And the clothes that are on will be wet before that patient gets home. And it'll be added in as the fourth load of laundry that caregiver's done that day.
Yeah. Right.
I think from the outside looking in, caregiving looks clean and contained, and there's an expectation that you should be able to handle it. And somehow if you don't handle it, if you become burned out or you become ill, then somehow you failed at it. What a horrific set of expectations to place on someone.
Yeah. And I think that's why there's a lack of support, right? There's a lack of people who are willing to kind of go, oh, I think that person needs help. They don't recognize the caregiver as needing support. And so the caregiver then becomes isolated and then sort of withdraws back and goes, okay, well, if they're not going to support me, I guess I have to just do this and, bear down and do it. And, it's true. What people don't see is they don't see the side of the caregiver-carry relationship where, and I've had so many caregivers tell me this, like, oh, he's so mean to me. Well, he's hitting me now. My mom just screams at me, and she's so angry and she's so mean. And people don't see that you're dealing with that emotional side of it as well, right? Emotion and abuse, either way, is not always visible. And I think that's why then, I don't want to, she's got it, so we don't want to, we're not going to get involved. And that just makes the situation compound and get worse.
Sure.
And it's a really horrible thing, and then they're not going to reach out and ask for help either, because then they're ashamed because they feel like if I ask for help, then they're going to think I can't handle this.
Right.
And that's a personal failure when you're already emotionally battered. I always tell the caregivers to talk to your doctor and set your appointments. If you either that or take your carry in, go to their appointment, then go to your appointment. But let your doctor know you're a caregiver. It's important for your doctor to know that you're a caregiver, full-time, part-time, but you're a caregiver, because they will look at you differently because they're your caregiver. And if they don't know everything that's going on in your life, how will they treat you accordingly? So let them know that. Don't just tell them, well, my back hurts and, my legs are tired and my eyes are bulging out and my hair's about to fall out. Let them know you're a caregiver and they understand that a lot better.
Well, they ask you, what's your occupation? And people will say, oh, I'm a teacher or I'm an administrative assistant.
Or not working right now.
Right. Or I'm not working right now. So you're either a full-time caregiver or you're a part-time caregiver. If you're a part-time caregiver, it means you probably go to your full-time job and then you go home or to your caree's home. And so if a doctor says, it's like reporting your health history. Have you ever had hepatitis? Yes. Have you ever been a caregiver? Yes. Are you currently a caregiver? Yes. Your doctor should know all of those things because it affects you mind, body, and spirit.
Well, that's a dream, right? The day that that's actually on a questionnaire means that you and I have done our jobs.
Well, that leads me into the next question, which is what's on your wish list for caregiver support?
Oh, well, gosh, I could give you all kinds of things on my wish list, but I think I would say that, again, just creating that awareness, being able to make that difference for a caregiver. I, of course, for Gimme a Break, envision an outreach center in every community worldwide, because there are caregivers everywhere. And, a quick side story is my cousin who lived in Japan, and she is about 6 years younger than me. She was like my younger sister. And so she was so excited about this when I started caregiving and when I started Gimme a Break. And she was so excited because she was a caregiver her whole life as well. She cared for her mother who passed with liver cancer at a young age. And she cared for her brother who was autistic, who at one point committed suicide. And then she cared for her children. She had 2 children. She was a single mother. And she, of course, then cared for grandchildren as well. So she was a lifelong caregiver like myself, and we related on it in so many levels. And she was so excited that one day she would be able to start an outreach center in Japan, in her community, because she had so many people she knew that were going through what we were doing. And she was so excited about the information we were providing. And she passed away last year in July from liver cancer herself. So that just made me more determined to not just outreach to the United States and go beyond Hawaii, but also to continue this and reach out to every place in the world, because there are caregivers everywhere, and caregivers need support. They need resources, and they certainly need community. And we need to form a community of caregivers to hold hands with each other and support one another, because we're coming out. And I always call it our coming out, right? I go, doggone it, everyone else gets to come out. I go, caregivers are coming out. We need our own pride. We need our own parade, and we need our own community and recognition, because caregivers of all kinds, not just, caregivers for family, but care workers even, all need that support and recognition. And so I call it our coming out, and I hope to eventually make that something that's a worldwide recognition.
I love it. That's a big ask, but totally doable, and so many people that can benefit from it.
And with social media now, we can all connect. So let's just all connect. And if we can do that, that's a start.
Yeah. Okay, so we're going to switch focus a little bit.
Okay.
So ask the hard questions. What are you doing for healthy self-care these days?
Absolutely nothing. No, I'm kidding. Of course,
there is a right answer.
I know. I practice what I preach, right? And so one of the things I do is I tell caregivers every morning. And the hard thing is that there are mornings when you're just jumping out of bed because something chaotic has happened. But every morning, it's really important to take a moment and have a mindful moment and just do a gratitude moment. And a lot of people tell you to look around and see 3 things you're grateful for. But what I tell caregivers is to tell yourself what 3 things you're grateful for that you do. So I'm grateful that I have patience. I'm grateful that I have a kind heart. I'm grateful that I am worthy of self-care, right? 3 things that you're grateful for you, not around you or not things that you have, but within yourself that you're grateful for as a caregiver. And that personal recognition, I do that. And I tell all the caregivers in our community to do that. And also, I'd love to start this because we do this in our community right now. And you can do it according to your time zone, but 10 o'clock a.m. at Hawaii Standard Time, we have an alarm set on all of our cellular phones, and the alarm is to laugh. And so we do a laugh moment because laughter tells your brain that everything's okay, and it releases all these wonderful chemicals into your body and helps you get through the day. So at 10 o'clock every morning, know that there is a community of caregivers here in Hawaii who stop whatever they are doing and they laugh. And we change it every now and then. We've had giggle till you wiggle. And oh gosh, I can't remember all of them because that was one of our favorite ones. And you can set it to what laugh really hard was another one. And because your brain doesn't know the difference, right? If you laugh, fake or real, your brain will send out the same chemicals into your body because it doesn't know the difference whether it's real or fake. So just do a fake laugh if you have to, but do it. And so we have a moment of laughter at 10 o'clock every morning, and that's part of my ritual as well. And I cannot tell you some of the funny stories we have of people who are in the middle of a meeting or who are standing in a crowded room or somewhere and they suddenly burst out laughing. So I would love to see that at 10 o'clock Hawaii time, all around the world, there are people bursting out in laughter. And so that was my dream as well. The other thing I think is I'm a meditator. So I don't sit with my legs crossed. I just sit and have a moment where I just sort of meditate and clear my thoughts and think about positive things and bring in that energy. And I have learned to reach out. Having our sessions has made a big difference on me. It's healing for me as well as for the caregivers. And so connect with a community. Find a support session near you. If not, join ours. We have 2 weekly support sessions, Tuesday evenings at 8 p.m. here in Hawaii, but also Friday mornings at 9 o'clock. Saturday mornings at 9 o'clock in the morning. So, I don't know what that time that would be, maybe in the afternoon for other time zones, but it's all online. So you can join in and you can definitely be in a community that's connected and we can all laugh together.
That's perfect. I love it. I love it.
That's what I do.
Tell my listeners how they can connect with you and listen to your show and check out your online magazine.
Oh, absolutely. You can definitely get onto our website. Just go on to GAB for Gimme a Break. So GAB808.org. And just go onto our website. Everything's there. We have all the information there. You can click buttons. I love buttons. My website has a lot of little buttons you can click. I'm very simplistic that way. I don't need you to find a highlighted area or click the screen till you find the spot. Just click the button. It's there. That easy. I'm a point and shoot kind of person. So our website's great. And of course, our Facebook pages are always there and informative. The Gimme a Break Facebook page. We also, the Caring Caregiver live show has a Facebook page, and Giver's Guides is the name of our online magazine. And mind you, it's online because we lessen our carbon footprint. I think there are enough paper things out there. We don't need another one. But also the beauty of it being an online magazine is that a caregiver can read it and look at it on your phone. Caregivers can't always go and pick up a magazine and sit down and read it. But while you're in the doctor's office waiting for waiting for your caree and their appointment, you can have it on your phone and you can be looking at something positive, reading articles about what you can do for self-care right there on your own phone. And that's the beauty of it. It's a fun flip book, so it actually makes the sound of turning pages. So if you're a tactical person, we even approach that. Anyway, enough about that, but that's Giver's Guides, because we're giving caregivers a guide to caregiving, to survival of caregiving. So that's why it's called Giver's Guides. And that actually has a website as well. But you can check us out. Our Facebook page for Giver's Guides is there. Just look it up, or giversguides.com is our website. And you can see past issues there. But that's pretty much it. Yeah, check it out. Definitely love to have you join us on one of our sessions. You may be surprised that it's really not, it's very different. We're not, hi, my name is Savy, I'm a caregiver, kind of a session. It's really an open forum of caregivers who are already kind of maniacal because of the caregiving that they're doing, just being real. If you've already noticed, I'm kind of a real person as it is, and our caregivers are very real. We provide a safe space so that a caregiver can say something like, I just wish it would all stop, and feel okay to say that and be validated that it's okay to feel that way by other caregivers who feel just like you. So, you don't have to put up a strong front for us. This is your safe space.
Wonderful. I'll have links in the show notes to the Giver's Guides, to the podcast. So listeners, you'll be able to go straight in to the work that Savy's doing and check it out and connect with her on social media. Savy, thank you so much for being on the show today. I know my listeners are going to benefit from all these resources you're providing. I'm so grateful for the work that you're doing.
Oh, I can't even thank you enough for being part of that. And now we're community to one another. And I'm excited, by the way, you didn't say anything, but Helen is going to be on the Caring Live show, the Caring Caregiver show in, I think, a few weeks. So make sure you connect up with the live Caring Caregiver show, because you can see what the date is, and let your listeners know, Helen, when you're going to be on so they can tune in. It is a live show, but you'll also be able to hear it in podcast later. So that's, don't worry if you miss it, but thank you for being part of a community and for everything you do. And I'm so honored to have met you and so happy to be on your show. Thank you.
There's a lot of wisdom to extract from my discussion with Savy. First thing, always, communication is key to having a quality caregiving experience. Communication is key. Communication with your caregiving team, communication with your caregiving unit, your caregiving village, communication back to the caree, the person who's receiving the care. All of that is super important. Savy should know this. It's one of those, she knows a few things because she's seen a few things. She's had 2 hospice experiences with her mom, who, quote unquote, graduated from hospice, and it sounded like her first couple of hospice experiences weren't that great. So I think this third experience has been different. It's been good. She learned how to communicate with the team, and the team has learned how she likes to be communicated with. And that's important, because one of the things she said is ask questions. Don't be afraid to ask questions of your hospice team. Another lesson that she has learned is that caregiver guilt is a thing, and there's a lot of wear and tear on a caregiver that comes with providing care for someone you love. In fact, 30% of caregivers will die before the person they're caring for. And I've seen that happen in hospice as a nurse, but I've never heard that particular statistic before, 30%. Yeah. And if the caregiver is 70 or older, they have a 70% chance of dying before their loved one. So when you go to the doctor, if you are a caregiver for someone, it's super important to let your doctor know that you're a caregiver. They're going to ask you, what do you do for a living? Are you retired? They're wanting to know because there are jobs that are physically taxing for people. Here's what I would tell you. Caregiving is physically taxing because it taxes body, mind, and spirit. Maybe you don't provide physical care for your loved one, but you can't affect one area of your humanity without affecting the other two. So when you go to the doctor, you have that checkup, and you should be having it. Make sure you don't neglect your own health. Tell your physician, tell your nurse practitioner, I'm a caregiver. So on her wish list, I love her wish list, her wish is to have a caregiver support center in every community. Wouldn't that be amazing to have one in every community? And in my head, of course, it's a hospice house, right? That's what I would like to see in every community. So I would leave you with one last piece of wisdom that Savy shared with us. If you're a caregiver, and I would tell you whether you're an unpaid caregiver or you are a caregiver who gets paid at a job, find 3 things about yourself at the end of the day that you're grateful for. Be grateful to yourself. Recognize the small wins that you have every day and be grateful for something about yourself. You can find the Giver's Guides, the online newsletter and website for caregivers at giversguides.com. I'll have a link in the show notes so you can go straight in there and connect with it. You can check out all the resources they provide and the work that they're doing to support caregivers. If you're interested in the resources and the services that Gimme a Break provides, you can check out their website at gab808.org, and I'll have a link in the show notes to that as well. Be sure to catch the next episode of the Heart of Hospice podcast. You can find more episodes on theheartofhospice.com, and don't forget to subscribe on your favorite podcast platform. You can connect with the Heart of Hospice on Facebook and Instagram and send your questions or comments by email to helen@theheartofhospice.com. And remember, no matter who you are or where you are in your hospice journey, you are the heart of hospice.
This is the Whole Care Network. Helping you tell your story one podcast at a time.